We are so excited to have Jim Wetzel to the show today. So, Jim, I used to work for Jim way back in the day. Katie, did you work for Jim before or no?
But he was always nearby, always nearby. You can't
So
get
we
away from
are
Jim.
we are so excited as we've been highlighting allies and just experts in the industry. So, Jim, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, great to be here. I'm excited for the conversation.
All right, so we always start off, Jim, with just who are you personally and professionally?
Well, that's a good question. So, I was thinking about that going, well, how personal do I want to get here? So I'll tell you some things that you probably already know and maybe some things you don't know. Um, Born and raised in the Twin Cities. Um, I was born on Easter Sunday,
Oh.
ac- and my parents stayed in their house their entire lives. That house
Aw.
that I was born in. I grew up and I did a lot of odd jobs in the neighborhood, making things, mowing lawns, shoveling driveways, all that kind of stuff, so that I'd have enough money to pay for my own schooling. So when I got to college, my next door neighbor was a plant manager. And he said, well, instead of working at J.C. Penney's, do you want to work in my factory every summer?
Oh,
Mm,
wow.
So I was a card-carrying member of the Sheet Metal Workers Union,
Did
mm.
not know this.
I didn't
and I
either.
assembled transmissions all summer long for 3 summers, and that paid for my college education.
That's awesome.
I also got a very traditional, oriented assembly line kind of transmission building facility. And that's when I decided that education was really important
Mm.
to, to really move forward in that education. I ended up getting a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering from the University of Minnesota. And then I continued and got a master's degree in business from University of Minnesota as well. And when I came out of college, I had to make this decision about what kind of company to go work for. And when I came out of college, it was actually a good time to come out, and people would give you job offers during the interview on campus.
Wow.
And I ended up deciding to go with a small company, $25 million company, local to the Twin Cities, because I wanted to know how stuff worked. When I did interviews with these larger companies, you ended up becoming a cog in their system. When you
Mm.
first, at the entry level. So I could have designed um, the tires and wheels for an F-16 airplane for the rest of my life. So that was one of my job offers. I could have worked for a number of the major companies in the Twin Cities. And I went, no, I'm going to start off small and learn everything about everything.
Okay.
Then I did that for 6 years, and that was in the plastics industry. And then accepted a job at General Mills after I got my MBA. And came into machine design. And that was 100% male dominated. When I was in this small company, oddly enough, it was about 50-50,
Mm,
Oh,
women
interesting.
versus men, and it was in R&D.
mm.
When I went to General Mills, 100% men in engineering. And a lot of that story, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that. From then on, from that first job on, which I was in that job for about 18 months, for the next 32 years, I had roles at General Mills that didn't exist before. So when you think about career paths and where am I going, and I aspire to be that, for the next 32 years, there was no role that I aspired to. And so because of that, that really shaped a lot of how I thought about each job.
Huh.
Um, I thought each job was going to be my last job I ever had to do. I was ever going to do. So I gave it my all because I didn't know what the next one was, or even if there was a next one. And quite often during my career, I was explicitly told, "This will be your last job. This will be you will not be promoted from here," because there was no place to go.
Mm.
There wasn't that next job. And the other thing that I think you know about me, but um, I really kind of come up through the individual contributor side. So technical knowledge, technical depth, technical expertise was kind of my calling card for many, many years. And what I've learned over the time and I've learned over my career is there's a huge job or a huge difference between management and leadership.
Mm.
And, it's kind of talked to you as someone that's coming into the company. Oh, do you want to be on the management side or do you want to be on the individual contributor side? And I go, well, I'd like to be on the leadership side because they're not the same. And I go, you know, having technical people that can lead is tremendously different. So as I think about my own career, I thought I was a pretty good technical leader. I don't think I was necessarily a great manager. And so the management side of all the forms and things and admin stuff that's thrown at you in a large company, I'm not so that didn't seem real exciting to me. And even going on the next level higher of doing that kind of stuff, I wanna make an impact. I wanna know stuff, do stuff, change stuff, make an impact. I have a much better chance at doing that as an individual contributor. The problem was, um, never got a chance until probably the last 10 years of my career to get a seat at the table. And I know as you think about men versus women or diversity and all these kinds of other topics, this fighting for this seat at the table, that's also true between individual contributors and managers of people.
Yeah.
And so I look at an individual contributor and go, you're fighting to get a seat at the table. And when you do, you don't fit in, right? Because you're speaking sometimes it's a truth to power kind of thing, but sometimes you're speaking in a way that's very direct and it's not management speak. And so my career has been kind of flowing from, you know, making transmission as a college student and kind of doing things. And during that time, I mean, I'm a woodworker. I've made every piece of furniture in my house. I've built a boat.
Jim is
I've
really
built a
good at it
canoe.
too. Don't let him try to downplay. He's, like,
Well,
amazing
the second he
with
said I built a boat, I was like, "Whoa."
So
Yeah.
I just like to make and build and create things.
Mhm.
And so when I think about a career, I think about my, what do I enjoy doing? It's making things, changing things, making things better.
I would
So it's
agree with
kind of a
that.
long
You were
long
always
answer.
a really, I would call it a positive agitator. And it's because you really wanted to make things better for, like, the group of people that were coming behind you.
Yeah, when I left General Mills, I became CEO of the Smart Manufacturing Innovation Institute. And Katie, I coined that phrase. I said, "Here's what you're going to learn about me." And I tried to figure out a positive spin to put on that statement, but I said, constructive disruptor. So
Alright.
Mhm.
I am not gonna try to throw a bomb in your kitchen, but I am gonna challenge you to figure out how we're gonna move forward. So I went, "Okay, what's the softer way to say that?" And I kinda hung on the words of constructive disruption.
Look at see some of that management stuff rubbed off on you.
Yeah,
I
it
know,
did,
I was
it
like,
did.
"See, look at you, Jim." But
Yeah, I'm a slow learner.
I do like the provocation of you can be a leader, you can be a technical leader. Because I will say, those of us that are managers, we don't love the admin work either. Like, nobody likes it. But I do think some people feel that that's their only way to leadership, air
Or to get
quotes.
that
And
seat at
so
the table. Yeah.
get
Yeah,
that seat at the table, and I think you were a great example, and then there was not many like you, but they were able to really do that. So I do think for our listeners, that's something to really push on because sometimes I see, Katie, you probably seen it too, and Jim, you too, people are kind of pushed into management and they don't want to, and they're not really that good at it. And then they kind of fail because it was like for the wrong reasons or
Mhm.
guidance around what they do. And they like I know people that are wonderful leaders and technical contributors and they don't need to be managers and they kind of felt like they had to go that path.
yeah, yeah. Our organization structure kind of forces people to go down that path.
Okay, so when did you know throughout this I did not know that you were a sheet metal worker, like, that does not surprise me, and I love it. It's very hands-on, right? How like, where along this journey did you know, like, manufacturing and, like, supply chain was really where you wanted to be? Was it just, like, you knew immediately? Was it a slow build over time?
More of a well, it was a step function. I don't know if I'd call it a slow build, but it was
Step
more of a
function, I
step
like it.
function. Um, coming out of college, I didn't want anything to do with manufacturing
Oh,
Oh.
interesting.
because I worked in the plant.
Yeah.
You were like, "I've
I
already
I
done
was
that."
I was an hourly worker, doing overtime, doing those jobs. And I went, well, I don't want to be doing this. And I wanted R&D. I wanted to do R&D stuff. I wanted to create things. I want to build things. I want to make new
Yep.
stuff. And then I want to work on the next new thing. Well, a year and a half into my role, in my beginnings at General Mills, I got called into the at the time it wasn't vice president, but it was the director of engineering, the person that ran the entire engineering department. And at that time, our organization was pretty much lifetime employment. They didn't have reorgs and cutbacks and things like that. Well, this was not one of those times. This was the first time in many years they were actually going to announce a restructuring.
Mm.
He calls me into the office and he says, yeah, Jim, we're going to do some restructuring. And I went, oh, I was the last one in. I'm going to be the first one out.
Mm.
He says, we're going to create a task team to go into one of our plants. And the plant manager has agreed to give you and 2 other people the full rights to figure out how to run that plant more efficiently.
Oh.
Would you like to do that? And so again, when you're 20-something years old, I asked the question stupidly, do I have a choice? Is this an option?
Sorry.
He says, no, you have a choice. We're not going to, you made the cut already. So you're fine there, but we have this opportunity. And he pulled out a napkin, literally a bar napkin. And he had written on this bar napkin, what he thought was a hidden plant worth of capacity due to losses and inefficiencies. And he said, I know that if we go after our manufacturing facilities, we can find that hidden plant. Do you want to be a part of that? Yeah. So, but my bent was, no, I want to work on R&D, but I said yes to this thing. So I went to South Chicago for 3.5 years and worked in that plant. No, I lived in Minneapolis. So I worked out a deal Monday through Friday to be in the plant, and the weekends I'd be home. And they gave us the Wheaties system.
That's cool.
And our whole job, you think about what's going on these days with continuous improvement, system engineering, all that none of that stuff existed. These were the days where Deming is becoming popular.
Okay.
And so we're reading Deming books to try to figure out how to apply this in a General Mills facility, in one of the oldest facilities around. And I went, this is really cool. That's my step function hook.
I love it.
On manufacturing.
Very cool.
So, Jim, can you talk about who've been women in your life that inspired you? And kind of what did you learn?
Well, that's a loaded question. In my career, in my personal life,
It doesn't matter. Anyone.
the women that I've crossed paths with have influenced me dramatically. I mean, have shaped me, have changed me, have the impact's been amazing. And probably the largest contributor to that is my wife. We were high school sweethearts. We were married 40 years before she passed away. She changed how I approached work, not only just life, but talk about work. And here's what she'd say to me every morning. She would say, Jim, she said, be safe, be kind, and play nice with others.
She knew you really well.
So she knew me really well. Now, when my son was going to kindergarten, she told him the same thing. But that constant message, as I would sit there in a meeting where I'm not being heard, or I'm being totally frustrated, or it's just not going. You're not hitting. It's just not going right. I would think about the be kind, play nice with others, and try to figure it out. I remember the first site leader that was a woman at General Mills. She came from the R&D organization, and she became the first leader in one of the established cereal plants. And I'm looking to go, wow, how is this? This is going to be really interesting. So I called her up and said, how can I help you? And she said, I am going to be super open and vulnerable, and I'm going to invite you in to help. So you think about the way plants used to be, where everyone was autonomous. No one wanted to say how they're really doing. Everyone had the big boy bravado kind of approach. She said, I'm changing culture here. First thing she did was she painted the walls and put lights in the building. And all of a sudden you walk in the building and they hadn't changed anything, but it was bright and airy and you could see all of the inefficiencies. You could see when there were losses. You could see when
Mm.
stuff wasn't as clean as it needed to be. You could see all this kind of stuff. And then she said, Jim, come in here. I would love you to go through my processes, both processing and packaging, and figure out how we could run better. And those were kind of topics that were taboo, right? You don't want anyone from corporate to come in and help you run better. That's kind of a sign of weakness. And so this whole vulnerability and transparency, I saw a lot of that in the women that I interacted with
Yeah.
over my careers.
I love that.
Mhm.
Okay, so want to talk with you about smart manufacturing. I mean, this is a space that you are in daily. And I think for us, at least, it felt like you're also one of the pioneers in
Yeah.
this space. You literally wrote a book on digital transformation. So could you share with our listeners, what's the difference between maybe a connected factory and one that's truly smart, and really paint the picture of like when you hear a smart factory, what does that look like, feel like, sound like, so that people have a better understanding of that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's really about end-to-end flow and how decisions are made. And whether the decisions are made by people or the decisions are made by equipment, technology, AI, uh, uh, control, automated controllers or whatever, but they're making decisions rapidly without delay in a connected way where the data is interoperable. So if I look at, as an example, what's going on in industry today, and you think about, if you don't know about industry 4.0, you know, prior to industry 4.0 was industry 3.0. And industry 3.0 was all around um, bringing cell-based automation. So the invention of a PLC to actually do process control or
Hmm.
to do unit
Mhm.
control. And Industry 4.0 was about integrated and interoperable kinds of things. Probably even though you can read this in the media differently, 95+% of the organizations are in Industry 3.0.
Yeah.
They talk about smart, they talk about AI, but at best they're doing a pilot. There's very little full depth immersion in these topics. So it's just starting to happen. But this concept of, I not only have the act together in my plant, I have my act together in the supply chain,
Hmm.
Mm.
in end to end. And if you look at the companies that are in the top 100 companies, and I know you guys benchmark and talk to a number of these people as well, uh, they don't have a lot of holistic stories that are inbred to their company. They have a pilot in this business unit or in this facility, and it gives them hope that this is the right path to go down, but it's not broadly implemented yet.
Mhm.
What's
And
like
Jim, when you
holding back, you think?
I
Like
was gonna
what?
ask that question.
Yeah, I mean, what is like we've got pilots all over the place. What is holding us back from scaling it?
There is no vision.
Mm.
So uh, both of you are part of the solution and part of the problem.
Ooh, I like it.
Because you're at levels in your organization that are visionary and strategic as well as executional.
Mhm.
You both have these tough jobs, super tough jobs of having to run and operate
Mhm.
at the same time trying to be strategic and transform. And how do you balance that?
Yeah.
And the balancing equation typically goes, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but typically goes, if there's a problem, the balance just shifted to deal with that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And so how stable your system is really sets the pace of how strategic or how transformational you can ever
Yeah.
get. And the if you look at the data, and since this is kind of what I'm doing now, uh, uh, post General Mills, is looking at what are these success factors and why isn't this happening? Why aren't we going further, faster? 70 to 90% of the smart manufacturing projects fail to meet
Hmm.
their business requirements.
Wow, that many?
Oh, yeah. 85 to 95% of the AI projects fail to meet their business requirements.
Wow.
And so I went, okay, why is that? And the reason I give you a range is
Yeah.
because different people say different things, but the
Yeah.
failure
Mhm.
rate is
High.
predominant. It's
Yeah.
super high. So I went, okay, what's behind this? The number one failure mode is alignment to business needs.
So what does that mean, like, you went off and did the pilot without connecting it back into a business need? Like, what does that
You're
what's that
Or
enamored
did the
mean?
with
business
of
need
implementing the
change?
technology. People, you think about people, process, and technology, just as
Mhm.
categories that we always talk about. Technology failure is 7% of the cause. 93% of the cause is people and process.
Mm. That theme comes up a lot. Like,
So
we talk to so many people across so many different industries, and every time they talk about transform, they're like, "People, people,
I
people,"
have a
and then
follow-up
process.
though.
Yeah.
Do you feel like so I've seen a couple different ways that companies try to address this. So, do you feel like separating this transformation team out to make sure that's their priority is more helpful? Because the tyranny of the urgent will always hit Katie and I. But I think when you do pull them out, then they do lose that business connection. So, is there like a hybrid, or what are your thoughts on that?
I like that question.
yeah, I have yet to see separating them out work
Mm,
Mhm.
because into some cases, it's abdicating authority and responsibility to a team that doesn't have to own it.
mm,
It's this
yeah.
owner renter kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Mm,
well, who do I want? I want to have operations own it. I want to have, the roles you guys have now. You should be owning this. This should be
uh-huh.
yours. Now you might have to create a team underneath you to do this.
Yep.
So you have separation in being light on day to day and heavy
Yep.
Mhm,
on moving forward. But when you start assigning it to your technical function, that's where the wheels come off.
Mm.
mm,
So
okay.
as an example, when people first hear about smart manufacturing or Industry 4.0, like they're thinking, oh, I got to talk to my engineering controls guy, I got to talk to my IT department, and I go, that's the last people you want to talk to because they're going to get hung up and go, this is all about technology. Well, now you're going down this path of 93% failure rate. This is all about people and culture and getting ready. One of the things that I do to reset the mindset of the manufacturers that I'm working with, I say, during our engagement, here's my ground rules. I want to push you on this. Here's my ground rules. Assume for our engagement that all technology you ever needed for your organization or in your life already exists. Second thing, assume that it's free. Don't worry about what it costs. He goes, then they kind of go, okay. And I said, my hypothesis is if it's free and it exists, you'll still F it up. And the reason is um, you haven't figured out the destination that
Mm.
you're going on. So so my next thing that I give them, I said, here, let me give you some explanation. Take transportation as an example. Look at the technologies available to transport you. There's a bicycle, a motorcycle, a rocket ship, an airplane, train, a boat, all these technology things that transport you from A to B. How many of you decide on your transportation method or mode before you figure out your destination? Oh, I just got a new bike. Let's go to Hawaii. Sorry. I forgot there's an ocean there. Oh, let's take the space shuttle. Oh, that's stupid. Yet we will sit here and have our technology groups evaluate and explore and do pilots on technology before we even figured out what our destination is. And so I push back on them and say, let's take that off the table and let's talk about what is this future state you're trying to create. And guess what I get from leaders? Crickets.
Yeah, I was
Crickets.
gonna say they have no idea.
I get operational metrics and goals that they have their performance review against. Oh, we got to have so much, actual versus schedule. We have our safety record, our cost per case, our just the metrics of the
Yeah.
business, the financials of the business.
Mhm,
You got to hit all those. And I go, I get that. That's not your vision. That's your scorecard.
mhm,
Where's this going? Are you? And then it's not have to put words in their mouth. Uh, Are you going towards a light out factory? Are you going towards every product's going to be customized? Are you going towards immediate demand, demand fulfillment? I'm not going to have a warehouse. I'm going to make on demand. I mean, what vision do you have that would transform how you have to do things? And so even though we use the words a lot about digital transformation, in some organizations we have teams that are called digital transformation, the reality is it's digital improvement.
Mm,
It's incremental. I'm optimizing my existing practices. I'm not blowing them up. I'm not doing something else. And so my third kind of scenario to try to get them clarity around what I'm trying to say is I go, how many of you go to Dave and Buster's, or how many of you gone to a carnival and played whack-a-mole? I said, that's what we're doing in industry. The problem comes up, the manager's got the hammer, and they go, we're going to do this project. And we're going to assign people to that project. And when they're successful, the thing, the mole's hit. Now what happens? Another one pops up. Another one pops up. Another one. There's an infinite number of problems that you have to solve. It never goes away.
yeah.
So because it never goes away, you're never advancing. And in a perfect world, you'd say, well, at least I'm going to get enough cost benefit that's going to pay for the effort that I'm doing. So, and I would say, yeah. So you're not drowning, you're treading water. I can come up for air. I can get the value creation that paid for the cost to deliver this, but I haven't moved any closer to that boat, that buoy, or that beach, or that thing that I'm trying to go to. And I would say, yeah, because you threw me in the ocean and didn't tell me where I'm trying to head to. So the best I can do is survive. I can go up and down and survive.
I have a follow-up. We're like way
Ooh.
off our questions, but okay. Do you feel like, and I have an opinion on this, that the commitment to shareholders, to external, prohibits staying on a, even if there was a vision and like longer term strategy, like how do you get out of that hit the month, hit the quarter?
Mm,
Because I feel like sometimes that's my opinion. That feels like it makes us abandon things more quickly
Yeah.
because we're like we have to like deliver to the external environment.
Do you? Do you
Do
have
we
to?
have to? I think people, well, feel.
Well,
I think they feel like we do.
the reason I push back on that is I go, there's a cultural imbalance here. Does every new product that you launch succeed?
no.
No.
90%. And we go, perfect. 90% fail. Sales and marketing forecasts, are they spot on? No. Well, then how come supply chain and manufacturing can't make a mistake? It's unacceptable.
Mm.
It's unacceptable to have a oops, right? And so you kind of go, well, this is interesting. You've automatically tilted the scales to not allow risk taking in supply chain. That's why you don't get anything. Who's going to take that risk?
Yeah.
And the risk is, and so I would take that risk because I didn't have a fear of being fired.
Mm.
Because I'm going to bet on myself, and I'll find something else. And so, but most people kind of go, I like it here. I'm going to settle that, and I'm not going to take on that risk.
That's a
And
good,
maybe
yeah.
it's also because you think about this is stereotyping, but you think about the personality profile of someone that goes into engineering or a technical thing. They're very science and fact-oriented people
Mhm.
that aren't on the ledge, like a salesperson or a marketing person might be more willing to be creative or willing to be out there in some of the statements that they make. And so imagine this, because I've run across this in my consulting life. It's been pretty easy to find out that in most companies there's 3 to 5x improvement in supply chain if they did these things.
Wow.
Mhm.
And it's also pretty typical they can never get funding to do them. But where that same story is told in product launching and product innovation. We could make this product and it's going to be a home run and it's going to deliver this, and we make those bets all the time. So I think back at this and go, there's something here. There's a
Yeah.
nugget here. I don't know exactly how to peel it back exactly, but there's a nugget here that's inconsistent. It's okay in one side of the fence and it's not okay on the other side of the fence.
My team members have told me, they're like, marketing and commercial can be directionally accurate, and we have to be to the second decimal
Well, I
on.
almost feel like you're you're, like, balancing out that risk. Does that make sense? Like, supply
Yeah,
chain is
mhm.
counted on because if it like, they built in the risk, and supply chain will help will help ensure, like, "Oh, extra productivity savings? Okay."
I also think
Yeah.
the nature of, as Jim said, offer sometimes I, like, see in emails, I'm like, "We offered up the details," so now people can, we
Mhm.
will add a Excel sheet for someone to scrutinize, or and I'm
Mhm.
like, "They didn't even ask for that," like, we offered it, and then we're like, "Why are they all up in our business? Because you put the business, like, where
Yeah.
in marketing, like, the slide is like, "Generally, we're gonna do this, and it's gonna be amazing," and it's like sizzle reels and when we offer up that level of granularity, sometimes I'm like, we're welcoming the scrutiny that comes to that, so, yeah.
Yeah, I think about that in the line of I was thinking about this the other day. I said, how would I evaluate the stability of a supply chain?
Hmm.
So it doesn't seem like we've transcended from what we kind of already know to be true and proven. So think back, and I know both you know this stuff, but think back to maintenance.
We both
Meantime
love
to
maintenance.
meantime
We
to
do.
failure and meantime to repair.
Mm.
And expand those concepts, at least conceptually, expand those concepts to supply chain. What's the mean time to failure in a supply chain? So is it you have disruptions constantly that
Yeah.
you're having to react to. So that ripple effect, that thing that goes bump in the night that's now it's gone all the way up to your desk. And now you're involved in but there's a lot of stuff that don't even get to your desk that
Yep.
your people are scrambling with. So if you thought about the levels of stability we have on the factory floor, when we think about mean time to failure and mean time to repair, expand that to the organization, and maintenance people would be embarrassed to say what the numbers of the supply chain are if you could actually calculate that, because it would be really bad. Then then you go, well, what's the mean time to repair? How fast you respond to the upset.
Mhm,
Yep.
So as this smart manufacturing digital transformation discussion is maturing, people are starting to look at measures like what's the cost of delay,
mm,
delay in decision making, right? So, and I know Courtney knows this. On the control system side, you might have an alarm that goes off. Controls engineers will program an alarm to go off. What's the typical response from an operator when the alarm goes off?
Depends how often it goes off.
Well, turn it off. First thing you do is turn it off because it's noisy and it's red. So turn it off. But the wanted response isn't turn it off. The wanted response by the alarm is fix it, address
Mhm.
it.
Yeah.
So what's the delay to actually get to address it? So there's nowhere in our accounting system that is measuring the cost of delay.
Yeah.
The second thing is nothing in our accounting system is measuring the cost of having permissions. Right. So you think about what I'm seeing starting to emerge is many more of the leaders of the organization are driving down this concept of empower to act. And you kind of go, oh, I get it. Because by the time something has been delayed and then now they don't have the permission to solve it, then we schedule a meeting.
Yeah.
And then we schedule another meeting, and it depends if how many meetings and how many levels of the organization you got to get involved to solve this thing. Time goes by, and when that time is going by, you're losing out. You're not winning.
Yep.
mhm,
Yep.
So I think these new things around what's my delay, what's my permission, and I'm translating that to boy, there's something there on this maintenance side when they come up
mhm,
with what's my frequency of failure and what's my response rate? And I
I
don't know
love
of
that
any
analogy.
supply chains end to end that
Yeah.
actually are on top of that.
Yeah.
I like that.
All right,
Right.
Jim, we're switching it a little bit to
Yep.
servant leadership. Now, partly because you just won this award
Yep.
for your digital transformation leadership.
Yep.
Specifically, you were thanked for your visionary servant leadership. And so, kind of two questions here. One, how do you model this for your teams and how do you develop servant leadership inside a technical organization or any organization, really? And then the second one is because we've been talking about it is how do you help teams set that vision so that they're not treading the water and that they are thinking about like where you could potentially go?
Yeah. Let's see. How do I want to peel that one back? So, two things on the servant side, servant leadership style side. One of the things that I tried to really practice when I was at General Mills was providing servant leadership for individual contributors. to help fight the battle for those folks that never got to the table
Mm.
and to try to figure out how could they be included. Simple things like, and I know you both experienced this, but not getting invited to an engineering conference
Mm,
because you're a manager. Yet in the conference, these topics, these really relevant topics were being discussed, and you're left on the outside because you're an individual
mm.
contributor.
Yeah.
How is that voice being lifted up? And so one of the things that I would coach people on, and I still do today, folks struggle at the lowest level to try to figure out how to package up a problem and solution that a leader, an executive can say yes to. How come every time I do this, no one will listen to me? No one will fund me. I keep telling so-and-so, or I put it in a suggestion box and all I get is dumped on. And I step back and look at it and say, you just served up a no sandwich.
A no sandwich.
Who in their right mind would say yes to what you just said? You have the right answer. You packaged up into a no sandwich. So you need to work on how a reasonable person would say yes to this. And so you think about way back in the day, the Bill Wallish executive coach training, speaking stuff
Mm.
was get your main point up front. But when you rock and roll on that, you get to the point where everything you say, people are nodding their head going, we want more of that. Yes, 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 yes. And so on the servant leadership side, folks don't know. I mean, both of you are in positions to make really important decisions that control a lot of money or a lot of resources and a lot of direction. You've probably experienced where you don't want to have to be in a position where you're the only person that has any thought in this thing. You want the organization to bring ideas forward,
Yep.
right? Because
Yep.
you know, none of us in this call have the market cornered on brains, right?
Nope.
We want
And also,
those.
you get further and further away from things, like, you have to also acknowledge, like, somebody's gonna know this a lot better than me.
Yeah, and so you wanna make that door open, and so
Yep.
how do you train them to give you yes sandwiches so that you're kinda going, "Yeah, give me more of that. That's exactly how I wanna package up. I can say yes to that. I don't wanna be the person to say, 'No, no, no, no,
Yeah.
no.'" What
All
was this,
right.
part of that? Or did I get it?
I
The
think you got it.
vision.
Yeah, the vision
Did you
part.
go?
Oh, so the vision part. So I'm teaching this. One of the things I'm also doing is I'm teaching strategy and vision in smart manufacturing through RPI. So Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. So I run a
Very
course
cool.
on this. And then when the students I have them working on strategy and vision, and they're giving me problems. They're giving me project statements. And quite frankly, I pull out of my continuous improvement bag of tricks the 5 whys.
Mm.
Well, we need to do the, I was talking to a plant manager the other day of a large organization. He said, we need to improve OEE. And I said, why is that important? And he kind of like paused. What do you mean, why is it important? I said, well, yeah, so your operating efficiency goes up. Okay. What am I going to do with that? He says, well, uh, uh, I said, "Well, so are you trying to increase margins? Yeah, are you not competitive in the marketplace? Are you gonna do a price adjustment on your product? Are your shareholders asking you for more profitability? Do you have demand that can't be met and you need more capacity in your line? You don't want to build a new factory?" And I'm going, "Why? Why? Why? Why?" Because OEE, improving OEE is an operation tangible effort.
Mhm.
It's not the why. The
Yeah.
why is what you're gonna do with it. And connecting those dots back to strategy and vision, um, typically isn't done. So I'll just my method is quite simple, like a 2-year-old. Why? Why? Why?
I like it.
So we're getting to our last question, which is Katie and I's favorite question. I don't know, where did we get this one? We
We
borrowed
got
it
it at,
from
the Gen W
NW?
conference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, it's hero hardship highlight. And so we talked about hero, somebody looked up to, hardship, something tough that you got through, and then highlight, what are you kind of most proud of that you've achieved?
Personal or professional?
Whatever, you can mix
Whatever
it
you
up.
feel like.
I'm not a big hero fan. Um,
John Church wasn't either. We he
wasn't
was
it?
like,
Yeah. I I am much more interested in, at least this point, especially this point in my life, um, values and character.
Mm,
Mm,
And I look at folks and going, um, do they authentically behave the same way privately as they do publicly?
mm,
I've seen way too much of um, the showman face, and then the reality is completely different.
mm,
So I won't name people, but they know who they are. Um, when they show up exactly, you know, when you're going out to dinner, as if you're presenting in front of a group at work, and they're the same person.
yeah.
mm,
That inspires me because people somehow are either they train or they believe that they need to shift gears. They
huh.
need to behave like they're someone else. Now, I get the fact that language that you use, Katie,
Jim,
Feedback
we
received.
we practice verbal discipline now on the podcast.
okay, but I language, can shift
Uh,
with environment, but it's not changing who you are. You're not becoming a
yeah.
different person because I
But
have to
Jim,
wear
you feel
this
like a lot
hat
of
and I
people
have
do
to
that? I
be.
feel like that's exhausting.
It's
Do you
exhausting. I've seen people just get worn out from that. So they're
Mm,
not in my hero class. So I really I look for those people that are authentic throughout this. On the hardship side, the easy one for me to pick out because it's personal is when my wife passed away.
mm,
And you think about, 40 years of marriage and all that kind of stuff, and then retirement and trying to set up your life, and then it changes.
yeah.
And that affects you. It just does. But you figure out a new way to get through it. And one of the things I didn't say that was kind of a hardship thing as well. Coming out of school, looking for that first job, my wife was diagnosed with some chronic medical issues, and some family members of hers were diagnosed with some really tough medical news. So throughout my career, I had been limited to not move. So you think about like you guys have moved all over the world. I couldn't. So you go, how does that hardship, and I really wouldn't classify as a hardship. It's a life choice.
Yep.
Um, change your options. And how do you look at it differently where someone else is going, I'll do anything to go to the next level. I said, That's not, I'm not wired that way, nor
Yep.
in my work-life balance, I've chosen not to take that path."
Yep.
And, um, it changes your perspective of being all in because I'm all in for the job and the work that I'm doing, now.
All right, and
And what was
highlight.
your
Highlight.
highlight? You know,
Yeah.
there's a lot of things I'm super proud of, but, I'm just gonna pick on the stuff that's super current right now. So, um, a highlight for me actually is, um, my teaching at RPI, at Rensselaer Polytechnic. I teach this course on, how to develop a strategic roadmap for manufacturing, and it's a certification course. So they have to pass an exam, and there's a capstone they have to present back, how they what their vision and strategy was for this uh, use case, this fictitious company that we create. And it's 8 weeks long. Of course, it's 8 weeks long. At the beginning, everyone comes with their own baggage. Oh, we should be doing this, and then I tell them, "No, you're just playing whack a mole, and you're serving up no sandwiches and all this
You
kind
give
of
them
stuff."
all the feedback.
Yeah, I'm giving them direct feedback, all this kind of stuff. Somewhere around halfway through the course, the light bulb goes on. Oh, we were thinking about this all wrong.
Mm,
I get it now. People and process actually are important to this equation. And here's how I need to fold them in. And then the last week of the course, they're presenting their stuff. And I just sit back and watch these students present. And I am so proud of seeing this, caterpillar to butterfly kind of experience that just unfolds. And I've done now the course for 2 years. I've had eight courses. We do it 4 times a year. Everyone's worked out that way. The caterpillar butterflies happen in every experience, and it's so it's so it's such a highlight to see that these folks are getting it and they can
Yeah.
fly.
I love
It's
that.
amazing. All right. Thank you, Jim. This was so
I know,
well,
I
I
got a
mean,
couple
yeah,
good notes over here.
I did. I'm like, I gotta take this back to work. I told somebody, I'm like, the podcast makes me smarter and better because I'm like,
Mhm.
every week I'm like, we're learning something new, and we always learn something new personally about people that we've known for years. So,
Yeah, it's been
thank you
fun.
for taking your time out for supporting Katie and I and sharing with our audience. We really appreciate you.
Well, glad to have been here. It's super fun to engage and talk with you and discuss with you. I miss our times together.
They were good.